Officer needs assistance.
They shot my brother.
It's not just a haunting number, it's an unignorable reminder of the harsh reality waiting outside the frame when we step into Boyz n the Hood 1991. Once a symbol of youth and a vivid reflection of society, the film breathed life into a generation. But 30 years later, audiences revisit it with more than just nostalgia. They shudder at the real-life stories: an actor murdered in prison, some stars tangled in the justice system, others rising to fame, while a few vanished without a trace. The lives of these cast members weren't merely scenes from a gritty script, they're real-world tragedies dug deep into the public consciousness. What happened after that moment of career luck that forced so many to abandon the spotlight? The untold behind-the-scenes story is right in front of you. Join us as we uncover it, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next dark secret hiding in Hollywood. When a film becomes both prophecy and social echo. In 1991, audiences at the Cannes Film Festival stood in stunned silence for 20 straight minutes, delivering an uninterrupted ovation. On screen was the story of young men growing up in South Central Los Angeles, where gun violence, poverty, and injustice clung to their youth like a shadow. That film was Boyz n the Hood, directed by a 23-year-old named John Singleton. Few could believe that a recent graduate of the University of Southern California had written the script in just 3.5 weeks, and even fewer could imagine the fight he put up to direct the $6.5 million project himself. But that became the turning point, a film that not only launched the career of a young director, but also became a cultural landmark, a prophecy that forced Hollywood to confront its own reflection. From its opening warning, 1 in 21, black males in America will be murdered in their lifetime. Singleton set a tone that was bleak and unrelenting. It wasn't just a statistic, it was an indictment of American society. And tragically, that warning didn't stay confined to the screen. In the 3 decades that followed, the real-life fates of many of the film's actors echoed that same harsh reality, turning Boyz n the Hood into more than just a film. It became a chillingly prophetic mirror of destiny. What made Boyz n the Hood truly different wasn't just the coming-of-age story soaked in realism, it was the storyteller himself. John Singleton, a young black man raised in South Central LA, turned down a $100,000 offer to sell his script to another director. He insisted, "I'm not going to let somebody from Idaho direct this story." That defiance allowed the film to retain its raw, lived-in authenticity. Every character was drawn from Singleton's own experience. Trey Styles, the boy sent to live with his father to learn responsibility. Doughboy, a reflection of friends lost to gang life. Ricky, the promising young football player dreaming of escaping the projects. That deep, personal connection moved not just producers, but seasoned actors as well. Lawrence Fishburne, who played Furious Styles, cried after reading the script. To him, it wasn't just a screenplay, it was a real piece of life from a community he belonged to. Commercially, the film was a marvel. With a modest budget of $6.5 million, Boyz n the Hood earned over $57 million at the box office, a staggering number for an indie film about the ghettos Hollywood often ignored. But more than numbers, its true power lay in its social impact. For the first time, mainstream audiences saw a black father portrayed as wise, loving, and responsible, completely contrary to the stereotypes long pushed by media. Furious Styles, only 7 years older than his on-screen son, became a symbol of guidance, a father figure who gave a new generation hope that they didn't have to repeat the mistakes of their environment. Yet that very realism came with a cost. When the film hit theaters in July 1991, outbreaks of violence occurred during screenings across the U.S. Within days, at least 3 people were killed and more than 30 injured. Media outlets rushed to blame the film for promoting violence, even though its final message was a simple line: increase the peace. At just 23, Singleton had to face the press and defend his work. "I didn't create the conditions that make people shoot each other. This is happening because an entire generation feels like they have no future." He argued that pulling the film from theaters would be an act of blatant artistic discrimination. Thanks to his conviction, Boyz n the Hood remained in cinemas and became part of a larger national conversation about the role of cinema in reflecting society. The film was remarkably ahead of its time in addressing urban redevelopment, what we now call gentrification. In one memorable scene, Furious Styles walks with his son through a neighborhood crowded with liquor stores and weapons shops, pointing out how the environment was set up to hold the community back. This message came before the word gentrification even became common in academic or public discussions. Today, more than 30 years later, as many American cities still face redevelopment that pushes long-standing black communities out, that scene feels strikingly prophetic. The impact of Boyz n the Hood didn't end at the box office. It sparked an entire genre of films about inner-city life, collectively known as hood films, throughout the 1990s. Works like Menace II, Society Juice, and South Central followed its path, but few reached the emotional depth or cultural resonance of Singleton's masterpiece. The Library of Congress later inducted Boyz n the Hood into the National Film Registry, honoring it as a work of cultural, historical, and aesthetic significance, a distinction reserved only for films that stand the test of time. More importantly, the film opened the gates for an entire generation of black artists in Hollywood. At just 23, Singleton became the first black director and the youngest ever to receive an Oscar nomination for Best Director. Cuba Gooding Jr., also 23, leapt into stardom from his role as Trey, and just a few years later won an Academy Award for Jerry Maguire. Ice Cube, only 21 when he played Doughboy, stepped away from the microphone and onto the screen for the first time, launching a path that would lead him to become a Hollywood powerhouse. Nia Long, just 20, began her journey as a leading black actress through her role as Brandy. Each of these young ages highlights a remarkable truth. Boyz n the Hood was carried by an incredibly young cast, but one powerful enough to change the course of their lives forever. A cast transformed. When the film ends with Doughboy quietly walking into the darkness, audiences understand that for young black men in South Central Los Angeles, there's rarely a happy ending. Yet in real life, Boyz n the Hood became the launching pad that propelled many young actors into the spotlight. It's a poignant paradox. A film that exposed grim realities also illuminated brilliant paths for a new generation of talent. From there, each cast member's life took a different course. Some reaching the heights of fame, others lost to scandal, and some gone far too soon. Cuba Gooding Jr. was the most talked about name after the film's release. In 1991, at just 23 years old, he was a complete unknown to general audiences. His role as Tree Styles, a smart young man torn between a bright future and the temptations of street life, showcased his full emotional range, from the fear in his eyes when confronted by a gun-wielding cop to the anguish when Ricky falls. Viewers connected deeply with Trey, thanks to the sincerity Cuba brought, at once innocent and mature. The success quickly placed him on Hollywood's radar. Just 5 years later, in 1996, Gooding Jr. made history by winning the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in Jerry Maguire at age 28. But fame isn't always accompanied by stability. A string of underwhelming films like Snow Dogs and Boat Trip stalled his momentum. Then, in 2022, Cuba admitted to groping a woman in a nightclub and received a sentence of rehabilitation, narrowly avoiding jail. Though to many he remains Trey from Boyz n the Hood, his later years serve as a stark reminder: rapid success often comes with a steep cost. If Cuba's story is one of early stardom, Ice Cube's is a testament to lasting reinvention. When Singleton offered him the role, Ice Cube was just 21, famous in the hip-hop world as a member of NWA, but completely new to acting. Singleton wrote the role of Doughboy specifically for him, and Cube embodied it so naturally that audiences believed he really was a kid hardened by the streets. His intense gaze, deliberate walk, and the pain masked behind a tough exterior every moment rang true. That breakout performance marked the beginning of a wildly successful pivot into Hollywood. Ice Cube became an actor, screenwriter, producer, and eventually a business mogul. He created the hit Friday franchise, the Barbershop series, and produced the acclaimed biopic Straight Outta Compton in 2015, which told NWA's own story. He even founded the Big E3 basketball league, expanding his influence into sports. Now, in his 50s, Cube has long escaped Doughboy's shadow, turning it into the stepping stone of a multifaceted empire. Morris Chestnut, who played the soft-spoken football star Ricky Baker, also emerged from the film with a promising career. Ricky's death in the film is gut-wrenching, a symbol of wasted potential, but Chestnut's real-life journey went in the opposite direction: long, steady, and enduring. He was just 22 and relatively inexperienced when filming, but his heartfelt performance, his innocent eyes, his yearning for a better life, made Ricky one of the film's most beloved characters. Following Boyz n the Hood, Chestnut starred in a string of successful films, including The Best Man, 1999, The Brothers, 2001, Think Like a Man, 2012, and TV series like Rosewood and The Resident. Even today, fans still shout Ricky when they see him in public, something Chestnut embraces with pride, grateful to have played a role so deeply etched into collective memory. Lawrence Fishburne, then 29, was already an accomplished actor when he took on the role of Furious Styles Trey's wise and principled father. Yet Boyz n the Hood gave him one of the most iconic roles of his career, a strong black father figure, something rarely seen in mainstream Hollywood at the time. Furious's impassioned lectures on dignity, systemic oppression, and survival were the film's moral backbone. Fishburne would go on to even greater heights, playing Morpheus in The Matrix, the Bowery King in John Wick, and earning accolades across film, television, and stage. Today, he is not only a legendary actor, but a cultural icon. To many, his image wielding a gun to protect his family in Boyz n the Hood and offering the red pill in The Matrix carry the same message: choose truth, choose responsibility. Angela Bassett, 32, at the time had only a small role as Reva Trey's mother. Yet that modest step opened the door to a powerhouse career. Just 2 years later, she exploded onto the scene with her Oscar-nominated performance as Tina Turner in What's Love Got to Do with It? 1993. Since then, she has become one of the most respected and versatile actresses in Hollywood, with roles ranging from indie dramas to the Marvel blockbuster Black Panther. In 2023, Bassett received another Oscar nomination for her portrayal of Queen Ramonda, becoming the first actress in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to do so. Though her screen time in Boyz n the Hood was brief, it placed her in a lineage of powerful cinematic works, where the voice of the Black mother was portrayed with raw truth and strength. At just 20 years old, Nia Long played Brandy Trey's girlfriend and made a lasting impression. While not a central figure, Brandy's intelligence, warmth, and emotional depth allowed Long's performance to shine. That role launched her into stardom, leading to films like Love Jones' Friday the Best Man and numerous acclaimed television appearances. 3 decades later, Nia Long remains a captivating force, starring in You People 2023 alongside Eddie Murphy and Jonah Hill. She once said, "Boyz n the Hood gave her the confidence to be myself and still find success in Hollywood," a simple statement that speaks volumes about the film's power in shaping the journey of a young black actress. Regina King's role as Shalika may have been small, but it was the first step in a career that would define her as one of the most versatile actors and directors of her generation. She won the Oscar for If Beale Street Could Talk 2019, earned multiple Emmys for Watchmen and American Crime, and directed the acclaimed One Night in Miami 2020. From a quiet supporting role with few lines, King showed that what matters isn't the size of the part, it's how you use it to launch a lasting career. Even minor cast members found lasting success. Tyra Farrell, who played the mother of Ricky and Doughboy, went on to star in Poetic Justice and the hit series ER. Rapper Yo-Yo, who made a brief appearance, continued thriving in the arts with her own show. Together, these stories show how Boyz n the Hood became a powerful launchpad, catapulting fresh faces into the vast sky of Hollywood. But no spotlight is without its shadows. Lloyd Avery II, who played the role of the figure tied to Ricky's demise, fell into real-life violence and died in prison at age 36. Diedrich Gobert, who played the pacifier-sucking Dookie, was murdered at just 22. These tragedies leave a haunting echo. Did the film somehow foreshadow the fate of some of its own? And yet, when looking at the cast as a whole, one thing is clear: Boyz n the Hood gave many something few films ever do a permanent place in cinematic history. For Cuba Gooding Jr., Ice Cube, Morris Chestnut, Nia Long, Angela Bassett, Lawrence Fishburne, and Regina King. This wasn't just a breakout role or a career milestone. It was proof that even from the poorest neighborhoods, brilliance could rise, leaving an unforgettable mark on the screen and in the hearts of audiences everywhere. Untold stories, behind the scenes. Every successful film has its secrets behind the camera, but with Boyz n the Hood, 1991, the behind-the-scenes stories are so extraordinary they helped shape the legend itself. 3 decades later, the cast and crew still speak of that time with emotion, from high-stakes auditions and near-missed destinies to the real dangers lurking just outside the set. These details, once revealed, only deepen the audience's appreciation for how the film was made through a rare kind of boldness seldom seen in Hollywood history. At the time, John Singleton was just 22 and had never directed a feature film. Columbia Pictures saw promise in the script, but wanted to hand the directing reins to a more experienced name. They even offered him $100,000 just to sell the screenplay and walk away. But Singleton, with the stubbornness of youth, stood up and declared, I'm not going to let a stranger direct the story of my life. That conviction paved the way for one of the most iconic debuts in cinema history and cast a nothing-to-lose energy over the entire production. The crew knew they were betting on a young man, and that made it both risky and inspiring. Casting itself became a heroic feat. Columbia considered offering the role of Tree Styles to Will Smith, then a breakout star from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Eddie Murphy was even on the list to play the wise father Furious Styles. Had those names been cast, the film might have become a glamorous star vehicle, but it would have lost its raw authenticity. Singleton firmly said no. He wanted faces not yet shaped by Hollywood people who truly embodied South Central. That's why Ice Cube, a young rapper with no acting experience, became the heart of the film. But Cube's audition didn't go smoothly. At the first casting session, he read the lines with little effort. He was busy touring and distracted. Singleton, frustrated, yelled, "I wrote this character for you, why aren't you taking it seriously?" But instead of cutting him, the young director pulled Cube aside and explained why Doughboy was the soul of the film. The next day, Cube returned and delivered a performance that stunned everyone. In that moment, Singleton knew he had made the right choice, and history would prove him right. Many casting decisions happened in the blink of an eye. Singleton recalled pairing Cuba Gooding Jr. and Morris Chestnut during auditions. Their chemistry was so immediate and natural that he stood up and said, "Cuba's Trey, Morris is Ricky." Then he went to lunch, leaving the casting director to explain to the rest of the hopefuls that the roles were already filled. It was reckless, even impulsive, but also the kind of certainty that only comes from someone who knows exactly what they're creating. On set, Lawrence Fishburne, already a seasoned actor at 29, became the mentor. When Ice Cube worried he couldn't cry during an emotional scene, Fishburne sat with him, encouraged him, and helped him unlock his emotions. When 20-year-old Nia Long trembled before a scene requiring raw vulnerability, Fishburne pulled her aside and whispered, "Put it all out there, don't hold back." She delivered a performance so moving it left the crew speechless. Fishburne even helped with casting, recommending Angela Bassett and Tyra Farrell for supporting roles, completing what would later be called a legendary ensemble. Not everything went smoothly. Columbia Pictures insisted on adding a fight scene between Ricky and Doughboy before the film's climax to increase tension. Singleton agreed. But when the studio pushed for a closing scene in which Trey explicitly tells his father he didn't seek revenge for Ricky, Singleton refused. For him, leaving the question unresolved captured the true internal struggle of the character and left audiences in deeper reflection. That refusal is part of what makes Boyz n the Hood's ending one of the most haunting of the 1990s. Singleton's commitment to authenticity went even further. To make sure every detail felt real, he brought in actual gang members as consultants and even cast some in crowd scenes. This added a palpable tension to filming real-life Crips and Bloods, monitored the production, sometimes objecting to how they were portrayed. On set, the line between fiction and reality felt razor-thin. One of the film's most iconic moments is Furious Styles' speech about liquor stores and gun shops placed on every corner as a means to destroy the black community from within. That scene was filmed just a mile from Florence and Normandy, the intersection where a year later the 1992 LA riots would erupt following the Rodney King verdict. In hindsight, many have said the film didn't just reflect society, it predicted it. The set was filled with hidden gems and heartfelt touches. A film buff at heart, Singleton included an intentional Easter egg tribute to Stand By Me 1986. The scene of the boys walking along the train tracks to find a dead body echoes that film, but with a painful twist in Boyz n the Hood. Death isn't a shocking anomaly, it's a daily reality. Singleton himself even makes a cameo as the mailman delivering letters to Ricky's house, a blink-and-you-miss-it moment. Tensions ran high, but the energy on set was electric. Nia Long later recalled how many crucial scenes were shot in near silence, the entire crew holding their breath, knowing they were witnessing something bigger than cinema. Ice Cube remembered his final scene, Doughboy walking off into the darkness, and said, "I felt like it wasn't just a character. It was a premonition of what would happen to many of my friends in real life." These revelations make Boyz n the Hood even more powerful. The film wasn't just built on a brilliant script and raw performances, it was shaped by bold decisions, close calls, and the real-life tension that surrounded its creation. That's why more than 30 years later, when the cast reflects on the experience, they still get emotional. To them, Boyz n the Hood wasn't just a movie, it was a memory. A place where youth, ambition, fear, and fate merged into something unforgettable. The Present Lives of the Boyz n the Hood, 1991, cast. 3 decades after the film's release, the lives of those who helped make it legendary have diverged down many paths. Some have become living icons, others stepped away from the spotlight, and a few were caught in the web of scandal or loss. Looking at the cast today, audiences don't just see personal journeys, they also see the weight of destiny bound to Boyz n the Hood, a film that forever intertwined with the real lives of its actors in ways both glorious and painful. Cuba Gooding Jr., the young Trey, is now 57. Once at the pinnacle of fame after winning an Oscar for Jerry Maguire in 1996, his career slowly declined through a decade of critically panned B-movies. In recent years, legal troubles have overshadowed his work. In 2022, Cuba admitted to groping a woman at a New York nightclub and received community service in lieu of jail time. In the years leading up to that, he faced over 30 similar accusations. Once a rising star, Cuba now carries the image of a fallen one. Still to fans who grew up with Boyz n the Hood, he remains Trey, the intelligent, conflicted kid yearning for a better future. These days, Cuba lives more privately, rarely appears in public, and is working to rebuild his image through smaller television roles. In contrast, Ice Cube Doughboy's tough exterior hiding deep pain has written an entirely different story. At 54, Cube is one of the most powerful figures in American entertainment. From his roots as a rapper with NWA, he became a film industry mogul, creating the Friday Comedy's Barbershop franchise, and producing Straight Outta Compton, a biopic about the very group that launched him. He even founded the Big G3 basketball league, evolving into a full-fledged businessman. Still active in film music and voice acting, Cube often reflects on how Doughboy helped the world take him seriously, not just as a rapper. From a tragic death on screen, Cube emerged in real life with success and fulfillment, proof that art can transcend fate. Morris Chestnut, who portrayed Ricky Baker the football dreamer, is now 55 and still affectionately called Ricky by fans. Unlike his character, whose life was cut short just as opportunity knocked, Chestnut has enjoyed a long, steady career. He's appeared in numerous TV series, most notably the Best Man franchise, which reunited him with Nia Long across 2 decades, from the 1999 film to The Best Man: The Final Chapters in 2022. He also starred in Rosewood the Resident and several box office hits. In his personal life, Chestnut is known for being grounded with a peaceful family and virtually no scandals. To many, he represents the clean Hollywood artist, quiet but deeply respected. Lawrence Fishburne, now 64, remains a towering figure in the acting world. After playing Furious Styles, he cemented his place in pop culture as Morpheus in The Matrix and later as the Bowery King in John Wick. His work spans film, television, Blackish, and Broadway. On and off the screen, Fishburne is revered as a mentor, just as he was on set with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Nia Long. Though he's experienced personal upheaval, including divorce, Fishburne remains active in the arts, proof that true talent never fades. Angela Bassett, who played Trey's mother, Reva, is now 66 and widely regarded as one of the most powerful actresses in Hollywood. Known as the Queen of Black Hollywood, she has played iconic roles across decades, from Tina Turner in What's Love Got to Do with It, her first Oscar nomination, to Queen Ramonda in Black Panther: Wakanda, forever earning her a second nomination, and the first ever for a Marvel actress. She won a Golden Globe, was named one of Time's 100 most influential people in 2023, and off-screen lives a stable family life with actor-husband Courtney B. Vance and their 2 children. For many, Bassett is not just an artist, but a symbol of strength and resilience in a brutal industry. Nia Long, who played the sweet and sharp Brandy, is now 54 and still radiates the charisma that made her a star. Following Boyz n the Hood, she became a staple in romantic comedies and urban dramas. Her chemistry with Morris Chestnut in the Best Man series remains iconic among African-American audiences. In 2023, she co-starred in Netflix's You People, proving she's still in demand alongside names like Eddie Murphy and Jonah Hill. Off-screen, Long recently endured the heartbreak of a public breakup in 2022 after her fiancé's infidelity scandal, but she emerged strong, focused on raising her 2 children and continuing her career. On social media, she often shares empowering messages, showing how she turns adversity into strength. Regina King, who once played the small role of Shalika, is now 52 and among Hollywood's most celebrated talents. She has won an Oscar for If Beale Street Could Talk, multiple Emmys, Watchmen, American Crime, and acclaim as a director, One Night in Miami 2020. She's become a leading advocate for Black women in film and TV. However, her personal life was struck by tragedy in 2022 when her only son, Ian Alexander Jr., tragically took their own life at age 26. Regina paused her career to grieve and later shared, "Every day is a fight to wake up, but I know I have to keep going." Her grace in mourning has made her a symbol not just of talent, but of profound strength. Alongside these triumphs are tragic stories. Lloyd Avery II, who portrayed the character that shot Ricky, later became involved in real-life violence. In 1999, he was convicted of double murder and sentenced to life in prison. In 2005, he was murdered by a cellmate during a cult-like ritual. He was 36. Dedrick Gobert, who played the pacifier-chewing Dookie, met a similarly grim fate. In 1994, at just 22, his life was tragically cut short during an altercation in California. These chilling deaths remind audiences that the film's brutal prophecy was not limited to fiction, it followed some actors into their real lives. Today, when people reflect on Boyz n the Hood, they don't just recall a classic film. They remember the people behind it. Some became legends. Some quietly faded. Some are no longer with us. But all of them, in one way or another, became part of something much bigger. Boyz n the Hood wasn't just a movie, it was a milestone that defined the lives of a generation of artists. And so when fans ask what happened to them, the answer is they lived, they stumbled, they rose again. And most importantly, they left a legacy that will never be forgotten in the history of Hollywood. If you followed along this far, you've likely come to realize that Boyz n the Hood is more than just a film, it's a legacy, a raw slice of society, and a profound reflection on human fate. And there's still so much more waiting to be uncovered behind the scenes stories, cinematic secrets, and the real-life journeys of Hollywood's biggest stars. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Each week we'll bring you fresh perspectives, untold stories, and deeper dives into the world of cinema.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on the screen.